Hi everyone, I wanted to shoot a quick video about all the upheaval that is happening in Israel right now. I'm just a few weeks away from moving there myself with my family, and there's a lot of stuff that's happening there. As you may know, there's a lot of tension right now because Israel is waiting for a retaliation from Iran after Israel assassinated some leaders after being attacked in the north. You know, those 12 children that were killed in Majd al-Shams, and then of course the attack on October 7th, they killed a political leader there. So now there's been this period of waiting for another retaliation. And there were rumors last week that the retaliation could come any day or possibly next week. Well, next week on Monday is the saddest holiday on the Jewish calendar. It's called Tisha B'Av. And there is a rumor that if there's a retaliation, it could come on Tisha B'Av. But I want to explain to you why, if that retaliation happens on Tisha B'Av, it would be contradictory to this false narrative of Israel being the colonizer. Okay, so what is Tisha B'Av? Like I said, it's the saddest holiday on the Jewish calendar, and it marks some really devastating events in history that happened on this same day. Tisha B'Av, which is the 9th of Av, that's the Jewish calendar. It doesn't always fall on the same day on the Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar we use here in America, because the Jewish calendar is the lunar calendar and the Gregorian calendar goes by the sun. So 31 days versus 28 days. So Tisha B'Av falls on different days every year. On this year, it falls on Monday, August 12th. And Tisha B'Av is considered a very sad day. Like I said, lots of sad things in Jewish history have happened on this day, but most significantly were the destruction of the first temple and the second temple. They both happened on Tisha B'Av. As a side note, I used to visit my grandmother in Netanya as a kid all the time. And when we used to visit in the summer, Tisha B'Av was a day that I was never allowed to go to the beach. She told me that this is a very sad day where we mourn the destruction of the two temples and other things, the Bar Kokhba revolts and other things. But she says it's also kind of superstitious that if you go to the beach on this day that you would drown. So I was never allowed to go to the beach on this particular day. Okay, so let's talk about the destruction of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. So the first temple was built by King Solomon. You know him because he's mentioned in the Bible. He's the son of King David. He's the third king of Israel, unified Israel, and he ruled over Israel in Jerusalem. That's where the temple is located in what's known as the Old City of Jerusalem, which at the time, that was the whole city. The old city was inside the fortified walls. Anyway, on Tisha B'Av in 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Jewish temple, and all of the Jews were forced out of their center of Jewish life and into Babylonian exile, into Mesopotamia, which is like Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Syria, those parts of the world. And they stayed there in exile until the rebuilding of the Second Temple. The Second Temple period started in 516 BCE. This was when Zerubbabel and Herod the Great rebuilt the Second Temple. This marked the start of a 600-year period in which Jewish life flourished in the land of Israel. Now, it was also during a part of this 600-year period in which the Maccabean revolt took place, and this is the Hanukkah story essentially. In 70 CE, again on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av, the temple was destroyed by the Romans, and the Jews once again were sent into exile. Now, the Muslim conquest of that land didn't happen until the 7th century. In fact, the Dome of the Rock, which was built between 687 and 691, was built on top of the ruins of the second Jewish temple in Jerusalem. And you know, in archaeology, the most recent rocks are on top with the older rocks underneath and underneath. The further you dig down, the further you get down to history. And history has proven that there has been Jewish life in Jerusalem and in Israel going back thousands and thousands of years. So while the Jews were exiled into other places in the diaspora, there has always been a Jewish continuous presence in that land, even when the Jews were the minority. That's how they were able to come back. And so if there is an attack on Israel on Tisha B'Av, what does that say? Well, it's like a confession of saying that we want to choose this particular day to make a point that the Jews are going to be exiled, that we're going to attack you so hard that there will be no Israel. So if they attack on that day and say, like, we're doing it on Tisha B'Av, that's kind of like saying that they recognize, that Iran recognizes that there is a Tisha B'Av. Jews historically commemorate this day as the destruction of the first and the second temples. And so it's like saying that there was a first and second temple, that the Jews did live there thousands and thousands of years ago. And so there's a contradiction here between the point that would be made if there's an attack on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and this kind of false narrative that the Jews are colonizing someone else's land. If there is an attack, it's like admitting that the Jews did have a connection to that part of the world thousands and thousands of years ago. Now, I'm not going to get into politics, who gets to have what, who deserves to have what. The bottom line, though, is that these are two groups of people that have a long connection to the land and need to figure out how to live in this land without one killing the other. Now, while we're talking about destruction of the temples and Tisha B'Av and this looming terrible feeling, there also is another rumor that we may have some advances in a deal coming on August 15th. Not sure if that's going to happen, but there have been some rumblings that there is a hostage deal in the works that could come with a ceasefire. We don't know. There also, of course, is another problem in that the entire north of Israel has been evacuated. So there is the war that's happening in Gaza, in which Israel has vowed to destroy Hamas and return the hostages home. But there's also another war that started on October 8th that Hezbollah launched against Israel, and residents of the north have had to evacuate, essentially moving their borders, because now that part, northern Israel, is like a buffer zone. So that has to be taken care of, because all of the residents of the north, they can't even go to school. They've been relocated for the school year. And so Israel has to push back up and in order to be able to send them back home. So this week is going to be a telling week. Is there going to be an attack from Iran or Hezbollah or one of its or many of its proxies on Israel? There has been movement of friendly troops into the Red Sea and other areas near Israel. Is there going to be an advancement in any sort of a deal to end the war? And what happens with northern Israel? Will the northern Israelis be able to go back home? In the meanwhile, I'm packing my stuff and getting ready to make the move, and I'm very hopeful that we don't go during active war and bombings. That would be terrible. Everybody in Israel has been talking about there is no end to the war until all of the remaining 115 people who were kidnapped out of Israel are returned home. So next week is going to be a very, very telling week. If you are celebrating Tisha B'Av, this is a fast day, and this is also a time when the people in Israel are going to be on high alert. A lot happening. Let's hope for better days to come soon. And of course, if you made it this far, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'll have more updates and vlogs, and in a couple of weeks, I'll show you what it's like actually in Israel when we move there for the year. So please subscribe, Hadassah on Air, and I'm also on Instagram, and hopefully I'll pop up in your feed and catch you later. Bye.